we just wanted to highlight a couple of things from the session, from the reading, sorry. So I'll just put us here with you, Fabian, in the spotlight. So we had a couple of quotes from your article. So this was one which was about, sometimes these futures that we're thinking about can feel kind of so overwhelming and out of reach, and you feel like, what can I do in this like dominant system with its deeply held beliefs? And reading that for me kind of resonates on two levels. For hopefully, I think the people in the room, we're called the Changemakers Book Club, right? So it's, I think, people who are trying to make change happen, both in the world. We're kind of confronted with all of these big emergencies and crises that everybody knows very well, and it can feel overwhelming. But also in the UN itself, it can feel like, how do we bring about sort of change? And I think that's something that's so powerful and hopeful about this article of yours and lots of your writing, that this idea of like practicing a different future today in community. So we just wanted to like ask you to talk a bit about that and give us an example, because sometimes that can maybe feel like an abstract concept. But what does this look like for you? Can
you hear me?
We hear
great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ruth and Sabrina, for organizing, and hi everyone. It's nice to be together, and nice to be together again with some of you. I'm really glad that you all chose this article, because it's a thought that's really dear to me personally, and I find it actually very hard to communicate. I don't think I have fully understood it myself, and I'm still trying to really come to terms with it. I think at the essence of it is a question like, how does change happen? And how do things change and transform? And I have been part of many different projects that try to change something else, and somehow many of these projects were not very successful, and I've also, in my own work as a community weaver, I've also found that I talk about this briefly in the article, that communities are when sometimes in certain circumstances they are these bubbles, or looking for a word that does not have a negative connotation for that. It's a little utopia within a larger system, but probably that's just what it is. But that kind of create a little environment where we get to treat each other differently. And I've built different communities where people are just more kind to each other than they are usual, where people are more willing to trust a stranger than they are usual, where people are more generous with each other than usual, where people are a little bit more willing to like listen to other people and are a little bit more patient with each other than usual. And I think that's amazing. I think that's an incredible way of changing. Yeah, and so I also really think about, I just think that the big question that I have is like, what does it mean to practice? This is really a big open question for me, because like there's clearly the big difference is I spent a lot of time and been in a lot of groups talking about changing, talking about what needs to change versus practicing change. And practicing change for me is, how can I enact it, embody it right now? And there's something almost role play-ish about it. There's something like, let me put on this costume, or let me put on this like different hat here and try something different, even though it doesn't quite fit and I feel a little awkward with it. And many thoughts there that we can explore. Yeah, and I think I come also in this conversation like, what would it really mean to practice? And how can we really embody some of these ideas right now, right here? And Ruth, you asked me for an example, and then I'll shut up. I'm trying to bring this into work in like many different environments right now. But like I would say my favorite example has come out of like my personal environment, where we did a little experiment. I think it was last year, where we brought groups of friends. I live in Amsterdam, and we brought a group of friends here together who also live in Amsterdam, around the question: how can we practice a future with less plastic waste, or with no plastic waste? I think something like that. How can we practice that? And what we did is that for like 2 months, we kind of try to embody that future. And we try to like live as if we were like living in a future where there's very little plastic waste. And it was told, of course, told like around us, it's everything else was still like in the normal case. But what was interesting about that is, first of all, the social environment, the relationships, to some extent, the peer pressure, the peer accountability, but also just this like, yeah, we're in this adventure together, really made a difference in shaping my behaviors. And I noticed how low my barriers are, and how little willing I am to change. I go to a local supermarket. The big supermarket chain here is called Albert Heijn. Albert Heijn sells a big bag of organic apples. Comes in a plastic bag. It's very convenient. I use a lot of apples. We use it for our oatmeal every day. It's also a good price point. It's very convenient. Changing that behavior felt like a big step for me, because it was very convenient. It was very easy to get it. And I did it because we were in this like experimental phase, and there were all these other people in it with me. And I think this brings me to my second reflection, which is just that it made me realize that we all just swim and operate within a dominant system that does create negative incentives to practice these different futures. And in that plastic case, it meant that the incentives are for easy availability, it's cheaper, it's faster, it's more convenient to do things with plastic. All our supply chains worldwide are optimized, and plastic is a big part of that, but it keeps like shelf life and availability and whatnot. And so I'm losing myself a little bit in this plastic example, but the point being here is that like, if we want to create environments where we act differently within dominant systems, as I think all of us do, we need each other. To do that by myself would have been impossible. And we need each other to create that environment of support and encouragement and celebration. We had a little WhatsApp group where we posted photos when we went to the grocery store, where we could refill our buckets that we brought ourselves and whatnot. We need to be cheerleaders for each other to like start changing these behaviors. And in the example with the plastic, we only did it for like 2 months, and some of those behaviors have gone back to the norm, and some of these behaviors have stayed. And so that's what makes me curious about it, and that's why I'm really excited to try more of that. And I'm very excited, and I think you all are a great place to practice I think you are practicing a different future probably right now. I'm very curious to learn with you and all, what are different ways to actually practice. So long answer to a short question.
Thanks, Fabian. No, great points there. Yeah, Sabrina's got a question for you, and then we'll jump into our breakouts.
Yeah, thank you so much, Fabian. And I think you partly already answered the question we had, that how do we work within these dominant systems? You talked about plastic being a dominant system, and one of our other readings was about time and productivity and optimization also being a dominant system. What tips do you have for that, for us creating or challenging these systems, whether it be time or plastic? And how do you think that can help us practice a better future? And also maybe support innovation as well, bringing that into the conversation too.
Yeah, I think when it's in general about, creating these environments with dominant systems, I really would say, I think relationships are our best answer. I think my theory of change is that change happens along the lines of relationships. I think that is currently my theory of change, and that we need each other and relationships to do that. When it comes to, in particular, our relationship with time, I would say what I found is how important it is to invest into rhythm, regularity, consistency, and heartbeat versus like doing big things once. It's much better to do a book club once every month or every 2 months or whatnot, but really do it consistently so that people can join whenever it fits for them. The second thing there's much to talk about, but the second thing I would talk about is guilt. I think one of the main negative drivers I see in communities when it comes with relationship to time is guilt, that a lot of people feel guilty for not showing up enough, for not doing enough. And I ask myself often, like, how can we create an environment that is guilt-free, where it's okay that you show up when you can, with how you can, and wherever you can, and that there's no expectations, but there's invitations to continue to show up.
Amazing. Thanks, Fabian. You've given us some some great food for thought. I'm sure that sparked questions and ideas among everybody. I'm going to close our quotes and bring us